In this module, we're going to talk about how you can support and retain your GPs. Financial sustainability is, I think, one of the most important things to think about and do a lot of work in order to retain your GPs. We have done some work at Headspace National looking at the range of incomes that GPs can generate in the Headspace centres, and then there's quite considerable variance, which I think is partly driven by the way that GPs work, but will also be dependent on some of the other factors that we'll talk about here. So one of the important things to think about is the appointments, how you structure the GP's time. So the length, so that you can got to balance people not showing up, so non-attenders, with the GP seeing enough people so that they're able to generate a reasonable income. So GPs will vary a lot in how they want to do this. Personally, I've tried a number of different ways of setting the appointment lengths, and so initially, an hour or 45 minutes for young people's first presentation, 30 minutes for reviews, or even in some centres they've done 20 minutes for everyone, whether they're new or a repeat. So in terms of my personal trial with that, I settled on 30 minutes for everyone. And the reason for not having a very long appointment for new people is that they're the ones who are most likely not to show. So if they don't show, you're at risk of having a great big gap in your booking sheet. So that's important to find out. Although when a GP is just starting, that might be a reasonable way to introduce them to the work, get them used to the systems that are in place, allow them plenty of time so they can complete all the paperwork, etc. Talk to other people if they need to, settle in and feel comfortable. But it's important to engage the GP in how they want that to work. The other important thing about appointments is having really robust systems to manage non-attenders. So it'll be SMS reminders is what most centres do. And I think it's also good practice that if a young person doesn't turn up, that someone rings them. And this might be the GP or it might be reception staff. Just to say, look, sorry, you haven't shown up today, and we'd encourage you to rebook in, or hopefully you get onto them and see if they want to rebook in. It might be that they've decided not to follow through, and that's fine. At least you know what's happened. But that's also an opportunity to let the young person know, just a reminder that if they aren't able to make the appointment, to let the centre know to cancel the appointment, so that another young person can get seen, just so they understand the consequences for other young people if they don't cancel. The other factor that affects financial sustainability is what the GP is billing. So MBS billings are really important. So at one level, it's are they getting the highest rebate they can for the work? So this is really important in terms of GP mental health treatment plans, because GPs who have their GP mental health skills training can bill higher paying MBS items for that work, significantly higher. So if a GP doesn't have that, then that's a priority for them to get that, and they can get that through our online training, as I've discussed before. Then the other thing is really important is that GPs will usually do more than one thing in a session. This is classic thing that GPs do. So for example, they might do a mental health review, and then they might also do a physical health problem. So they might do an STI screen or something like that. Now, often in general practice, the GP, if they're privately billing, won't bill both of those things because it would be too much. In the Headspace context, it's really important that the GPs are actually billing for all of the work that they do, because they're bulk billing and it will significantly affect their income. So for example, if they're billing one of the mental health items and they're also doing another piece of work like sexual health screening, that they bill for both of those pieces of work, and that will make the work much more financially sustainable. Although it is really important that the GP clearly documents against every item number that they're billing. So they have to, bill around whatever the mental health item was, and then some documentation around whatever the other item number was as well, and then that will be allowable under Medicare. In terms of accessing information about the MBS items, either as a practice manager, a centre manager, to think about this issue, or for GPs, or to give the information to GPs to point them in the right direction, there's a couple of really helpful sources of information. One of those is the MBS package that we have on Our Space. So there's a whole chapter that talks about the MBS items for GPs. And so that talks about what items you can bill, where you can bill multiple items, all of that issue is fleshed out there. Some really helpful summaries are usually put together by PHNs. So if your PHN doesn't have a really helpful summary, then one of the other ones will. So if you just Google that GP item numbers or GP mental health item numbers, you can get a nice summary there. And then the other place to get any more further information around MBS items, including all of the details that you need to be able to complete and document in order to bill a particular item, that's also provided on MBS Online. So you can also check that out. But it is summarised in our MBS summary, and but if you need any further questions, you can go to MBS Online and they'll assist with that. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about electronic medical records, or EMR. This is an issue that comes up all of the time. So it's really important for people to be aware of, particularly if you haven't made the selection as yet. Even if you've selected your EMR and it might be a problematic choice, it's worthwhile at least being aware of the issues that GPs will face in using this. So in terms of the EMR, there are a number of options that GPs will be really familiar with, and they're pretty intuitive. They do all of the things that GPs need to do, and GPs can pretty easily move from one to the other. GPs really dislike master care. And for good reason. It's designed for mental health practitioners, it's not designed for GPs. It talks about being able to do the things that GPs want to do, like writing scripts and investigations, radiology, etc. GPs find it really clunky and counterintuitive to use. What's played out in some centres is that they'll have more than one EMR, which has its own problems because then you've got multiple files. But if it might mean that you can keep your GPs if you do that. But so at least thinking about, or you may decide to go with one of the GP friendly ones because it will still work really well for the other practitioners, and you'll have all of the files in the one system, which I think is protective. So that's medical director and best practice that GPs will usually be most familiar with and be happiest using. In terms of retaining GPs, it's really important to do some ongoing monitoring of the situation. So meet with your GP regularly. This is so key. So particularly during the first 6 months, but I would say ongoing. But you might even do it as regularly as weekly, so that you can, through that, you can see what the attendance is like, what's the no-show rate like, how are the billings going, is it looking sustainable, is it growing over time, is it building? Because it might be coming off a low base, but at least if it's building, you need to give it some time to sort of bed down. And it's really important to ask the GP what's going right, what's not going so right, can we do anything else to support this, so that we make it sustainable, and particularly so that the GP understands that you're interested, you're going to support them, and do the best that you can to make it work out. Then the other thing that's really important is how is the work going like for them? Are they enjoying the work? Are they getting to do the things that they wanted to do? If not, why not? Are there ways that we can support the GPs in doing that work so that it's meaningful for them? And particularly, how are they going with the level of risk that's presenting to them? Do they feel like they're getting enough support in managing that? Do they need more support? That I think is absolutely crucial. So it's not all about the financial sustainability. It's also about, how does this work feel for them? Is it satisfying? Is it feeling overwhelming? What can you do about it? If not, so meet regularly with your GP is my advice to you there.